All right, so we're just going to jump right in this morning. So we're going to start our day off with a presentation from We Matter. We Matter was started in 2016 by I'm sorry. We're going to have a prayer by Rita Gordon. Rita, do you want to come up?
I'm a bit rattled because I was just speaking to someone about the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. And a Nook lady that worked at M&O her name was Natalie, wrote a prayer for our sisters. I don't know if I can see, though. Okay, because it's on dark paper. It says, a prayer for our sisters. Creator, when we were born, you gave the gift of life. Today we are gathered here to stand up and remember Métis, First Nations, and Inuit sisters, mothers, daughters, grannies, aunties, nieces, and friends who are impacted by all forms of violence and abuse, including those who have gone missing. Creator, lift the veil of denial, ambivalence, ignorance, and attitudes of uncaring, and help us to find our loved ones. We do not know where they are or if they are alive or dead. Help us to bring each of our sisters, mothers, daughters, grannies, aunties, nieces, and friends home. Creator, as we remember the women, we must also remember their loved ones. Our families and communities are in pain. Give us the strength and comfort during these dark times. When we tell our stories, open the ears of the listeners so it touches their hearts and calls them to action. Creator, give the wisdom and courage to our leaders, lawmakers, police, and anyone who is called to help a woman who is suffering abuse or violence, or who has gone missing. May they see she is a woman who has loved ones, is a member of our community, and not first look to see if fault can be found on the woman. It's never her fault. Creator, we now turn our prayers to the men. In order for the violence against our women to stop, our men need to resume the role of taking care of and protecting their mothers, sisters, daughters, grannies, aunties, and spouses. Give the men who have abused the strength, clarity, and courage to admit their harm, seek help, and change. For the men who have harmed or killed a missing woman, we pray the guilt will cause them to come forward so she may be reunited with her family and put to rest in a proper manner to allow her spirit to be at peace. Finally, Great Spirit, we pray for all women who give us the wisdom, strength, and courage to stand up for ourselves and make a commitment to end violence and abuse in all of its forms. We pray that if there are women with us today, and I'm sure there are some here today, who are in harm's way, that you place helpers in their lives and place courage in their hearts to find safety and to know safety is their inherent right. Merci. Miigwech. Thank you, Quiana Mig. God bless each and every one of you.
I thank you, Rita, for your prayer and your thoughts for our missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. I want to, first off, I want to tell you, we need to thank Ty. We threw her into a vat of boiling water, and she's done nothing but rock this. So thank you, Ty. And the other little thing that I want you to indulge me with, and I'm looking for her. Oh, here she is. Yesterday was Sharon's birthday.
What?
And none of us even signified it, so I'd like you guys to sing her a belated happy birthday this morning.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sharon. Happy birthday to you. Okay, and now we're going to start with our first speaker. Yay! First we're going to have a presentation from We Matter. We Matter was started in 2016 by brother and sister duo Calvin and Tinkai Redvers. Overwhelmed by the number of suicides and other issues Indigenous youth face, they wanted to create a space that connects Indigenous youth across the country and provides support and love through culture and sharing. Here today, speaking from We Matter, we have Modeste Mackenzie and Ali Friedman. Modeste Mackenzie is a 24-year-old Dene Métis man born in Regina, Saskatchewan, and residing in La Ronge, Saskatchewan. He has a passion for culture, current events, history, politics, and jigging. He is a Red River jigging, square dancing, and heel-toe polka champion who worked as a youth support worker organizing life promotion programming for Youth on Reserve. The Senate of Canada acknowledged him for his work in 2017, which pushed his advocacy for better access to life promotion programming for Indigenous youth and the employment of Indigenous youth in the health field. Ali Friedman is a sixth-generation young Métis woman with roots in northern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. She has a BA honors in political science with a concentration in international relations from Carleton University and is currently pursuing a master's in Native Studies at the University of Manitoba with her research focusing on Métis culture and identity. She previously served as a lead for the Indigenous Subcommittee on the Ottawa Youth Engagement Committee and was member of the steering committee at Youth Action Now and was one of the 338 Daughters of the Vote in 2017, where she got selected to be the Legacy Network leader for the Decolonization and Indigenous Rights Toolkit. Please welcome Modeste Mackenzie and Ali Friedman.
I'm gonna have to adjust this a little bit here. We might have to go like that or something. Just kidding. They gotta put both of them together? Okay, how's that? All right. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Modeste Mackenzie. I'm a little bit shy and a little bit intimidated because there's just so many strong Métis women here. And it's just always intimidating because you guys are awesome, and you guys are the leaders of our families and our communities. And I just want to start off by acknowledging that. So my name is Modeste Mackenzie. I'm from La Ronge, Saskatchewan. I have a 3-year-old daughter. Her name is Natalia. She's Cree Dene Métis. She's just a mix of everything, just like me. I'm 25 years old. And my role with We Matter or my official title is the National Grant and Policy Coordinator. And over the last few months, I've been developing a national mini grant program that'll be launching soon that aims to provide life promotion events and projects created and spearheaded by Indigenous youth. And that'll be available to everyone between the ages of 13 to 30 all across the country. Yeah. I'm super excited. I'm kind of nervous though about it. So Allie and I are just going to talk about a few things. I'll let Allie introduce herself.
This height difference is really funny. Okay, hi, I'm Allie. I'm 23, 24 on the 15th. And thank you. Just wanted attention. Just kidding. Okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, so I'm Métis. Well, I like to call myself a mutt because I'm Métis, French Canadian, Italian, and Jewish. So all four of my grandparents just threw me in for a whirlwind there. But yeah, so I am from Ottawa, originally born and raised, but I'm Métis from out west, so like around Duck Lake, Flin Flon, the Paw area is where I come from. And I'm super excited to be here, and I'm representing We Matter as an ambassador of hope. So we have like, it's a new program that was launched last year, so I'm like the first cohort. And Ambassadors of Hope are basically Indigenous youth. We're spread out like coast to coast, basically. And our goal is to promote the We Matter message and life promotion, suicide prevention, mental health awareness, and kind of breaking the stigma. And so we go into communities and host like our own events in our back home and kind of back in schools and wherever. And then like when people like the Métis women reach out to us, we come and give presentations and just kind of show Indigenous youth that there's, you know, much more to life and that they're valid and matter, basically. That's why it's called We Matter. Because Indigenous youth don't ever hear that enough, not at all, in some cases. And so that's basically what We Matter is all about, is just showing Indigenous youth how awesome we are. So yeah. Does that work?
Well, let's see. How's that? Is this too far away? No. Okay, all right, just making sure. So I guess we'll kind of start off and go a ways back. I was born in Regina, Saskatchewan, to a Métis mother and a Dene father. And that's where I spent the first 7 years of my life. And growing up in the prairies, as I'm sure some people know, can be a little bit tough. There's a lot of racism that exists there. One of my first memories is being late to school. My dad was bringing me to school, of course, so we were late. And we decided to start running to school, and this was in Regina. And as we were running, someone seen us, and they decided to call the cops on us just because they seen me and my dad running to school. And my dad's he's like a taller, darker Dene man. So and that's like one of my first experiences with police, is just having to deal with that racism, and that it wasn't needed, that 911 call, because I was late for school. My dad was running me to school, wasn't needed. And then after that, I spent a good chunk of my life in La Ronge. And that's where, that's in northern Saskatchewan. It's about maybe 4 or 5 hours north of Regina. And that's where I really started to see a lot of struggles. Kids and classmates coming to school hungry, just addictions really devastating families. And from La Ronge, I then moved to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I eventually moved to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And that's when I really started to get into my jigging and my square dancing. And I was about 16 or 17 around then. And I went to St. Mary's High School. And at St. Mary's High School, kids from all over northern Saskatchewan, from Wollaston, from the far north of these flying communities, in Black Lake and Fond du Lac and Pelican Arrows, places that are really, really remote. All these Indigenous youth, and Métis youth, of course, too, would, like myself, would go there. And that's when I really got exposed to a lot of the real world, I guess. Had friends that committed suicide, friends that, just went down the path of addictions, friends that ended up in the penitentiary. And it was really challenging growing up as a youth in Prince Albert. But fortunately for me, I had my jigging and my square dancing, and I had my really, really tight-knit group of friends. And that's what eventually got me through, and that's what kept me off that bad path. And that was a gift given to me by two women, Maria Campbell and Yvonne Chartrand, the gift of jigging and square dancing. Do you want to talk about you? Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, my reality is a bit different. So I grew up in Ottawa and lived a fairly privileged life. However, I think, so I'm Métis and Italian, and when I moved, a lot of my school, most of my school was Italian only because of Ottawa, and a lot of people had a hard time validating that I was Italian, so they would just be like, no, Allie's Indigenous. And at the time, that wasn't the word used, so it was Aboriginal. But it was a bit harder because I was in French immersion, so autochtone is the word in French. And my friends, they were my friends, but everyone would just be like, oh, Allie's autochtone. So speaking in English, but calling me autochtone. So I always took that kind of like a slur, because there is an English word, but saying it in French, just it kind of had a dirtier meaning. To me, as I realized, I was just why are they saying that? And yeah, so that was something I kind of struggled with, is well, I'm not Italian enough to be Italian. And then because I am mixed, I'm am I Indigenous enough? So that definitely was something that I struggled with for a bit of my life. But thankfully, my dad, who I think a few of you know, Guy Friedman, has always kind of been proud to be Métis and dedicated literally his whole life to and his work to advocating for Métis and their inclusion in Indigenous issues and in life in general. And so I heard someone use through osmosis once, and I think that's kind of the best way I can describe how I became proud of my culture and who I am despite my mixedness, was just seeing my dad and him never losing passion, or he grew up in a very different time being called half-breed, and just seeing the worst of it. And so seeing him push through all of that to where we are now in society, where we still have problems, but being Indigenous is now trendy, and we're getting, everyone wants to be us now, where no one did, especially true of the Métis. Sorry, I'll say that. I have very strong views. I'm trying to be non-political. But it's a policy event, so I think it's okay. But yeah, so just kind of seeing my dad, I really wanted to kind of dedicate myself to promoting Métis especially, but just Indigenous inclusion in general. And I think I acknowledge my privilege, because I think as Modeste talked about, the realities for Indigenous youth, Indigenous people in general, is just awful. Suicide, we talked about the missing and murdered, that's very real and is constantly ongoing. And especially if you have, if you're impacted by socioeconomic factors that Canada has set you up to fail in doing such, you're just already in a rough place. And then add that with racism and just other things that you're dealing with. It's not fun to be Indigenous, and you're not listened to, and you're not taken seriously in society. So because I come from a place of privilege, and I am fortunate enough to be Indigenous and Métis, I like to kind of dedicate myself and come and speak and advocate for our peoples, because I recognize that I'm someone that people will listen to. And so I take that gift and privilege and speak on behalf of our people, and just try and make life a little better for us. What should we talk about? Yeah. Okay. Very poor plan. Oh, sorry. Can you switch my picture?
So, being Indigenous, being Métis is tough. It is. We have like what feels like the world sometimes stacked against us. We have the racism, we have the missing and murdered Indigenous women, we have addictions, we have just a bunch of negative views. We have the comment sections on Facebook that are just negative as heck. But We Matter. We Matter wants to change that. And that's part of the reason why Calvin and Tenchai started We Matter. I want to show you a photograph. Does anybody recognize her? She was recently elected as a member of parliament for Nunavut. And she's a good friend of We Matter. To be honest, I just wanted to show you guys a picture of her because she's so freaking awesome. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So yeah, Mamilak just got elected this election, and she's one of the youngest, if not the youngest, in Parliament right now. And what's really awesome about her is she has traditional Inuit tattoos on her face that she proudly wears, and that's something that we've never seen in Parliament, and we don't see much in society in general due to effects of colonialism and racism and just fear of being out and proud and Indigenous. But I think what's really awesome about Mamilak is that she is representing not only her people, but I think a lot of Indigenous people are just seeing her and are like, oh my God, like that's so amazing that she's in like the scariest and most serious place in our country. And she's out and proud and Indigenous, and like just the message that shows, because I know that's something that like I've personally struggled with, is like not seeing anyone like me in politics, and especially because that's the field I'm interested in. And like it's hard to find role models, and you have to kind of look for non-Indigenous people, or like when there is one Indigenous person, we all flock to them. Like I'm sure maybe not, but I personally was really inspired by Jody Wilson-Raybould right from the start, because I was just like, oh my God, like she's Indigenous, like that's like your go-to person. So just like being an Indigenous woman or person in general in politics, or being like a leader, is just so powerful because we don't see that very often. And so like a lot of you in the room, I'm sure, are leaders too. And like, it's just really important to like, I always struggle with like wearing like, I don't know, like my indigeneity goes past like leather and feathers and beads and all that. But at the same time, I think it is also really important to acknowledge that those things were stolen from our ancestors, and like they literally didn't have the right and were threatened if they were to wear them or be Indigenous. And so kind of finding that balance of like not putting your indigeneity like on display and like on show, but also reclaiming it and showing the next generation that's to come and like inspiring them. So yeah, all that to say, I think Mamilak is doing like an amazing job. And it's just really neat to have someone in the House of Commons with traditional tattoos and being young and Indigenous and a woman. So yeah.
I'm sorry. I believe this was taken at We Matter's first Hope Forum here in Ottawa, and this was a part of our first kind of collection of portraits of Indigenous Youth Rise. And this was taken in 2018, so a couple years before her election victory. But really, I think it highlights, I think this photograph highlights her commitment to her community and her commitment to the youth, which is incredibly important, and it's something that all Indigenous youth need to see more. We need to see Métis youth, we need to see First Nations youth, and we need to see more Inuit youth represented not only in the House of Commons, but in the media much better. Much better. Thank you. So I'll just kind of talk a little bit more about the story of We Matter and how it started. So We Matter, it's a national campaign that was created to remind Indigenous youth that no matter how hopeless, how hard things may get, or how lonely you feel, there is always a way forward in life. We Matter started as a social media campaign where Indigenous youth and role models create short video messages and share their stories of hardship, but also how they managed to get through those hardships and struggles. In October of 2016, We Matter started with 20 videos on its social media page, and within 1 month, the campaign reached over 1 million people on social media, and it's only grown since then. So now we are a national Indigenous youth-led organization focused on hope, mental health, and life promotion with about 30,000 followers just on Facebook. And we'll go into Kelvin and Tanchai. So these are the two co-founders of We Matter, Kelvin Redvers and Tanchai Redvers. Kelvin and Tanchai belong to the Daniniku First Nation, which is in the Northwest Territories. It's also where my dad is from as well. He was part of the 60s scoop. I think we think we're related, but we're not quite sure just because of like the 60s scoop. It really made things blurry, I guess, for my family history on my dad's side. Kelvin is, when he's not working with We Matter, he is a film director, and he actually has a show right now on CBC. Oh geez, it's escaping me. It's called Higher Arctic Haulers. I don't know, some of you might have heard of it. Yeah, that's his show. So, and Tanchai, I believe she has her master's in, hopefully she's not watching me from somewhere. Yeah, hopefully it's not live streamed and she's just, no. It's live streamed? Oh my goodness, Tanchai! No, I'm just kidding. But I met her a few years in Guelph, Ontario. We were just kind of like sitting around a table at a student center. And yeah, and then she just had this really, really weird name, like a name I've never heard before. And I was like, well, I have a weird name too. So then we got to talking, and then I had to leave, I had to go. And I was gonna look her up on Facebook and try to add her because she said she was from this community and my dad's from there. But then I never found her on Facebook because I didn't know how to spell her name. And then years later, she came to La Ronge. And it took like a day and a half before I was like, I think I know you. I think we met a few years ago. She still doesn't remember that though, by the way. Yeah. Tanchai and Kelvin believe that messages of hope can help a lot of young people in many communities across the country. It can bring hope to youth who are going through tough times. So in 2016, in the community that I reside in, La Ronge, my daughter was born. And it was a really, really exciting time. It was a really, really scary time because holy cow, I had this like little human being that I had to take care of till she's like, well, forever. And when she was born, about 2 weeks before, there were 4 young girls between the ages of 10 and 14 who killed themselves. They had a suicide pact. And that was just within a few weeks, and there were 72, 73, 74 documented suicide attempts in our community. And that freaked me out as a father, because in 10 years, or 14 or 12 years, that could easily be my daughter. Easily. So I quit my job, and I got a job with the local health services department. And with an amazing team as well. I cannot take all the credit. There was a full team that I was working with. we conducted and created a bunch of youth programming. Over the next 8 months, we interacted with thousands and thousands of youth, with or hundreds and hundreds of youth, thousands and thousands of times over those 8 months. And I think we did some really good work. I taught jigging. My other coworkers taught beading. We used a lot of our traditional and cultural skills and knowledge to, I guess, work with these youth and to show them that there's more to life, than a suicide pact and sadness. Yeah, and I guess that's how I first started getting involved with We Matter. So.
Okay. I saw a call out. I think it honestly might have come from Mummy Lex Facebook, if I'm being honest. But there was a call out for this organization called We Matter, which I hadn't heard of. And they were looking for Indigenous youth, I think between 16 and 24, to be ambassadors of hope. And I was like, and then it's kind of like work in your community and be a role model. And I was like, okay, like that sounds like the work I kind of already do and like aspire to do. So I'll apply and like hope I get it. So I applied, and then we had a Hope Forum in Winnipeg in May. And so a bunch, I don't know how many, there was like, I'm looking for where he is. Yeah, like 40 Indigenous youth from like as far as Halifax, Yukon, BC, Ottawa, like all over the country. We were flown to Winnipeg, and we had the first ever Hope Forum. And so there we received training from We Matter and other kind of local organizations about life promotion and suicide awareness, mental health awareness, and just how to be role models and advocates for our community and in our community and for Indigenous youth in general. And yeah, it was really amazing. And it was interesting too, because a lot of us, like, oftentimes people want to assume that all Indigenous people have the same realities or life circumstances, and like that's far from true. So it was really nice to meet with a bunch of Indigenous youth from all across Canada, and especially those of us who are passionate about mental health and suicide awareness, to kind of like share and exchange like stories and just tips and ways in which we can like help our community. So yeah, so that's how I got involved with We Matter. And then, like I said, the Ambassadors of Hope, once the Hope Forum was done, we took like all the training and tools that we received from We Matter and brought them back to our own communities. And a lot of the Ambassadors of Hope have like arranged film screenings of the film The Grizzlies. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's about like a suicide crisis that takes place up north in Nunavut, and like how they kind of overcame that struggle through sport. So we do film screenings of that, and then talk to youth about suicide and just life promotion. And then, like I said, we do community and outreach events. And I really like We Matter because that organization, like that trip to Winnipeg, was all paid for. And they have so much funding available, which matters when you're an Indigenous youth, because oftentimes you want to help your community, but there's no money and you don't know how you're going to do it. And We Matter has the funds and support to like, oh, you want to go to this community? Well, we can give you whatever honorarium, and we can pay for the flight or whatever. And like they set you up, which doesn't happen enough for Indigenous youth. Like oftentimes you have a great idea, but no one wants to help you. You don't have the money, your community doesn't have the money. And so you're kind of helpless and hopeless. And that's where we see the cycle of like, well, no one cares about me. And then if there's already an ongoing suicide crisis and people want to help and they know that there's no funding, then like that just continues. So We Matter is like, I'm really happy to be a part of this organization because they step in, and when there is a problem, they like recognize it. And if someone reaches out, they get the funds to rush and do like suicide prevention. Definitely not promotion. Life promotion into that community. So yeah, it's a super cool organization, and I'm happy that Tensha and Calvin kind of started it up and accepted me.
Let's see. Okay. So we kind of, all right. There we go. Tensha has her master's degree in social work. I remember. So Tensha, don't be mad. I'm just kidding. So we matter. We do a lot. We have a small but mighty crew. We have Kelvin, the director, who helps edit our videos, who does a lot of our technical support during our events. We have a bunch of toolkits that we can pass out and distribute. Of course, I didn't bring any because I'm me and I forgot. To Indigenous youth, to teachers, to social workers, to youth support workers that guide and can help you facilitate a discussion about some of those tough topics like suicide and self-harm. We have a program called the Ontario Support Network that's available to First Nations and Métis youth. It's specific to Northern Ontario, and it's a grant program where if a youth wants to do something in their community, they can do it. And then, like I said earlier, we're going to have this national mini grant program, should be launching very, very soon. And it's money for Indigenous youth, so that they can really do whatever they want to promote life within their community as they see fit. Because far too often, Indigenous youth they don't get a say. They don't get to say where the money goes. They don't get to create their own events. And when they say there's nothing to do, well, there's something to do now, or you know what I mean? We can give them something to do. And then we also have curriculum. We do speaking events. We fly to communities that are usually in crisis, or have just or have declared a state of emergency, or have just, I guess, moved past that point. But that are still, we go to communities that are still healing as well from a suicide crisis. So we do like a ton of stuff. And then we have a bunch of partnerships and collaborations with people, with organizations, with artists. I'm getting tired just kind of thinking about all the stuff that I have to do now after this. Because it's a lot. But I think maybe you should show them a video. Do you think we should show them a video? Just show them, okay. I think we should show you a video. I'm gonna skip through some of the slides. Don Burnstick did a video. Anybody recognize him? Where's he from? Yeah, Black Eyed Peas. Black Eyed Peas.
Black Eyed Peas.
That is a band actually in Saskatchewan. Yeah, you know them? Yeah, I love dancing to their. I'm sure everybody recognizes her, Cindy Blackstock. Okay, so I'll just play a video for you and just check it out.
Hi, my name is Sidonia Okina, and I'm from Willahukta, and I'm 17 years old, and I have cerebral palsy. So it's been a tough life. Like, I've been bullied a lot in life, and I am graduating this year, but I wouldn't be graduating if I didn't make some sacrifices. Like, I remember back when in grade 7, I was having a really difficult time with fitting in and getting along. I would go crying home every day until I finally got what was inside of me out. I finally decided to tell someone about how I felt, and it made me feel better. It made me motivated to finish school. And now here I am in grade 12, finishing off high school, and I feel really proud of myself. Like, there was times where they were really hard, but I kept telling myself that I can do it. And look where it got me. Right here. My message to you guys is, like, if you're having a tough time with school or anything in life, there's always hope for tomorrow. Like, don't give up. Like, even though you're giving up, like, you're almost at that point where you fell off the edge. You wouldn't fall off. You just gotta find a way to get back up there and show the world how amazing you are, because you all matter.
Yeah, she's really awesome. I had the pleasure of meeting Sidonie. I think it's been a few years since I've seen her, but I met her here in Ottawa at our first Hope Forum. I'm going to play another one here. Hopefully I can do this right. All right.
Wache. Hello, my name is Jack Linklater Jr. I live in Ottawa, Ontario. I'm Cree and proud to be. I live along the James Bay shorelines, the lowlands, and the Muskegowuk territory. My message to you, if you're having a hard time, look to the trees, as it shows you to stand tall and proud. Look to the rock, as it shows you the strength you need. Look to the river, as it shows you to keep moving forward in life as it flows and to never give up. To the flowers, as it shows you the love you need, the colors. The grass, as it teaches you forgiveness, as it always grows and grows no matter if you keep stepping on it. It's there to show you to forgive. We matter. Every little thing matters. The trees, the rocks, flowers. You matter. Stay strong.
So those are just like a couple of my favorite videos that we have, and we have, I think, around 200 videos. But I kind of want to put a challenge out to you guys, you ladies, sorry. Folks, yes. We don't have as many videos of Métis youth. That we don't have as many as we should. So if you know any Métis youth, or if you guys like want to make one, I mean, I'm sure we could do it here, or if you want to do it in the comfort of your own home and then email it to us or send it to us, you can do that. But we really need like some Métis people to do some videos. So yeah.
For the videos?
Anyone can do it.
Up to 30, right? Is that what you said?
20.
It like depends on the programmer really, but I mean if it's a video, anyone. If it's the ambassadors of hope, it's to 26, and if for a mini grant program it's going to be 30, so it's all over the place. But no matter the age, just a message of hope for Indigenous youth would be, yeah, and for Métis youth, I think is something we need more of.
Okay. Oh my God. So as mentioned, Indigenous youth and like especially Métis youth, because we get left out of everything, but we don't get the enough like support and just the simple message that like we matter and that like not to kill yourself, I think is just like so not heard enough. And I kind of like glossed over my history. I think I was just like, I grew up a little kind of confused and just like unsure. And, you know, I'm sure maybe some of you, when you're in like history class and you gloss over like the 2 pages that talk about Indigenous history, and you're just like, oh, like that's me, and then you blink and it's over, and you're like, awesome, on to the World War II again. Like it just like sucks sitting there and being like, wow, no one cares about my history. And maybe it's gotten better now, but I doubt it. So from like a very young age, Indigenous youth are kind of just not seen and not represented, and it's really hard because you can't really find yourself, and the things that you do find of yourself are like Pocahontas, which you don't look like her, and you're trying to find yourself in her, and you're like, oh my God, I'm too pale to be Pocahontas. Like it's just always forever messy, and yeah, like you, as you said, like Indigenous people and youth in general just aren't represented and don't see themselves, or it'll be like country westerns and we're like the evil Indian. Like it's just not a good time. So that's why I really like We Matter and the videos too, because it kind of shows everyday Indigenous people and telling each other that we care and love each other, because through things like colonialism and residential schools and the 60s scoop, a lot of like parents and grandparents weren't told that they were loved and don't really have that ability to show love, because their idea of love was taken away from them, and the one they got is not love. So that's really tough, and I know it doesn't translate a lot into certain communities, and that continues on to the youth, like the effects of intergenerational trauma, where their parents were never told they're loved, so they were never told they're loved. And then like that kind of continues, and that's where we see a lot of those cycles of like suicide and just self-harm and mental health issues, where they're like, I don't matter because I was never told I mattered. And the media doesn't tell me I matter. The media tells me that they hate me and that I'm causing all these problems. So like, that's like, it's just awful. Like CBC Facebook comments just suck. Like it's just not a good time. So that's why We Matter, and like creating those videos, and especially those of you who are older, like elders or just like grandparents or moms, like to make videos. I think that's really important that you guys should make videos, and especially those of you who are Métis, because a lot of youth don't have grandparents who tell them that they love them, because their grandparents aren't capable of showing that. And it makes a difference when you have a grandmother to tell you that they love you, and like even if you don't know them, just being like, oh, this person gets me. Like the videos, like even though you don't know the people, they have like a really strong effect. Like I was tearing up at the video, and I'm like, I've already seen this, but it just makes you feel so happy and like hopeful. So really make them. And that's why like I just really like We Matter, is because the message of like you matter, and like especially for Indigenous youth, is just like it can't be stated enough. And I love when I get to, like, I went to a community up north, and there was just like these little kids, and they were all saying that like we matter, and like I literally was like crying, and I have the video saved on my phone, and I just watch it sometimes, and I'm just like, it's so cute. Like it just brings me so much joy to like how into it they were, and like how happy they were to say like that they matter, and like just knowing that I was able to like help them like find like self-love and life just by like a quick little presentation with them. So that's really why I like We Matter. And yeah, I don't know, that's why it's really important to support and advocate for Indigenous youth. And also what I like is We Matter gives Indigenous youth the platform to do it for themselves. Because like as Modeste was saying, like sometimes youth don't really have a say in the policies or the events or anything that happens in their communities. And that can kind of suck and make them even more isolated, because they're like, well, you're coming in and telling me what I have to do, and I know what's best for me and my friends in my community. So that's why I really like We Matter, and yeah, why I think it's important to support Indigenous youth, because not only are the babies our future, but the youth are our present, and they're the ones that are like standing on the front lines and getting stuff done. And so we really need to like support them and help them out and tell them that they matter and that they should keep going despite what Canada says. So yeah.
I think something like for me, the important thing is, if you were to take anything away from this, is just to listen to the youth and listen to those Métis youth out there, because there are Métis youth who don't want to live, and there are Métis youth who are killing themselves. It happens. It sucks, but you know, the only way we can solve this and prevent this and stop this is to do it as a community. And yeah, I think we need to listen to the direction of the youth. I think the youth have the answers, or they have some of the answers to end this. And we need to listen to the youth. It just has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, stuff like this will just continue. And I don't think anybody wants that. Yeah. How are we doing for time? Jig? Yeah. Okay. I might jig, but there's definitely one more video that I want to show you, and it's from La Ronge, Saskatchewan, from my community, and then I'll jig for you. I'll jig for you.
Hi, my name is DeAndre Nadamagan, and I'm at Senator Miles Benn School in La Ronge. And La Ronge has gone through a very hard time. And this message is for the people that have gone through a very hard time, is to be happy and smile because life is amazing. You are amazing! You are amazing! You are amazing!
No, but that like open application. To when?
I don't know.
Okay. Wait. So yeah, so that's our presentation. But I do want to put that we are looking for our second cohort of Ambassadors of Hope. So if you yourself are between 18 to 24, 16 to 20, 26, I don't know the ages, 18 to 26, and sorry, and want to join our team. Oh, yep. Is that from across the nation? Yep. Yeah. Anywhere in Canada. And you want to join, or if you have like nieces, nephews, cousins, whatever, like reach out, or you can come see us and find out. But the posting's on the We Matter Facebook. And you just, it'll tell you how to submit an application. And you get to come out to the second or third Hope Forum in Orillia, Ontario, and just meet other Indigenous youth, and it's going to be a really good time. So, yeah, I hope that some of you or your family applies.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Are you going to dance?
I think I will. Oh, hey, really well. Good job. All right. Did you want me to do it?
Yes, I want you to.
Do we have a song?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Hello? No. Is it on? Can you hear me? Yeah. So my name is Jana, and I just want to raise my hands up to you because in my community where I was working as a support worker, we had a bit of a suicide crisis and a lot of attempts, and I utilized We Matter. I used the curriculum. We had so many proud students who were able to say, yes, our peers are dying by suicide, but we matter, and we're not going to let it happen to another one of our our youth. And I did call to see if we could have somebody come out, and unfortunately at that time, very low staffed. This was last year and the year before. However, they were there to support me at the drop of a hat. We went through the whole curriculum, and I raised my hands up to you and the program and the campaign because it made a difference. So thank you for all you are doing.
I'm the president of Women of the Métis Nation, and thank you both for coming here. Amazing presentation. And I do challenge all of these people. In fact, I want my staff to know that our next gift is going to be a selfie stick so they can all do videos. And I want the grandmothers to send a message because you do matter, all of you. And I also want all of our youth to use their selfie stick to send you videos of how amazing they are and how empowering the words that you guys use are. So I also want to say this, as an organization, I would love to build a partnership with you. We have a campaign called the She is Indigenous campaign, and we promote and highlight that all over social media and try to lift up and demonstrate that Indigenous women matter, just like what you're doing. And I think that we need to create a link between what you're doing and what we're doing so that we can promote We Matter on our website. So I really would encourage that relationship to continue. And I encourage all these people in here to get a video going so they can help support your Métis gap within your program.
This is more commentary, I think. First off, hands up to your hard work, but more importantly, your heart work. And I just wanted to just highlight something that you brought to our attention today, and that your work started as a social media campaign. And I have a profound belief that if we're going to connect to the youth, we have to connect where they are. And they're on social media. And we are very frustrated as older folk with how much screen time our youth are engaged with. And we're always trying to look at ways to separate our youth away from the screen time. But we're not looking at, this is the world that our youth are raised in. This is the digital era is where our youth are savvy and navigating and swimming and breathing and building community. So I call on all of us to look at that screen time a little differently and what is going on there and how can we connect to our youth that way, because that's where they are. And so when you call on us to build more youth up and bringing them into that social media space, I also then join in that course of stop abusing our youth for where they are and start lifting them up where they can be.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, you two. I'm sorry, we do have to move on.
Oh, okay. Can they put up our AV people? Do you have can we get a version of the Red River Jake going?
I can help them find it.
Okay.
No, they'll
Yeah, it'll take them 2 minutes.
Okay. It's just like a specific jig that I like.
Oh, okay.
Carly. Here. Okay. Thank you. Move these chairs where? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll do a couple changes for you. Yeah, I'll do a couple changes here for you. I didn't warm up, so we'll see. Okay, and turn it up too. Loud. Loud. It should be okay. Starts the opposite.
Our men are such good dancers. White boys can't dance like that. Okay, thank you so much, Modeste and Ali. That was really lovely and heartwarming. Thank you so much. So next, we're going to have a presentation from the Métis National Council on Climate Change and Health. So here today, speaking from the Métis National Council, we have Aaron Myers and Jim Fraze. Aaron was hired as the Climate Change Advisor to the Métis National Council in May of 2019. Prior to joining MNC, she spent the last 12 years as a lead program officer for the Climate Change and Health Adaptation Program at Indigenous Services Canada. Her work has taken her all over the country, as well as internationally, supporting Indigenous voices in the climate change dialogue, policy, and program development. In 2005, Erin was awarded an honorary membership to the Fishing Lake Métis Settlement for her work with Métis youth, which reminds her of why this work is so important. Jim Fraze graduated with a master's in economics. He retired in 2019 after working for the government for 30 years of service with various departments such as Parks Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, Natural Resources Canada, and Health Canada. Over the final years of his career with Indigenous Services Canada, in collaboration with Indigenous communities, his group helped build a climate change and health adaptation program. This program built relationships with individuals, tribal councils, and Indigenous organizations to address climate change impacts related to food security, mental health, emergency management, and water quality. As principal of JF Consulting, Jim works with his team to specialize in Indigenous engagement, climate change, sustainable development, and health and social policy. Currently under contract with the Métis National Council, developing a climate change and health vulnerability assessment to assist the organization in understanding the risks that climate change poses to its members. Please welcome Aaron and Jim.
Tanse, good morning. I don't know how to quite follow what we just saw there. That was incredible. Yes, again, thank you, and another round of applause for those amazing young people that are doing such great work. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me here today. I'm really honored and humbled to be speaking to you today, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Algonquin people where we're meeting and working and where I'm raising my family. I'm sorry, I'm not quite used to a side screen, but I tend to talk and talk and talk, so this will keep me in check, I think. Okay. So I've been working in the climate world and the environment world for the last 20 years. And this is honestly the first time I've been asked to talk about the impacts of climate change on women and young girls. And it's such an important topic because it's a real concern and issue, and one that we have to keep in mind every day in the work that we do, and one that I keep in mind in every day the work that I do. Climate change is happening. It's happening in this country, it's happening day to day, and each of us are being impacted by climate in a very different way. Climate affects people very differently across this country. Whether you're living in the north and dealing with the melt of permafrost, whether you're living on the coast and potentially dealing with sea rise levels, or in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, where you're dealing every year with fire season or flooding. Climate change is happening, and it's happening in Canada, and it's happening around the world. And, you know, these are some of the images that we've seen in the last year. Droughts, floods, forest fires. I was out sandbagging last year when we had the flooding here in Ottawa. I have people in my community who are impacted by tornadoes the year before. These are things that are happening more frequently and things that we need to be mindful of. And at the center of that, climate used to be, for a long time, put in the environment world. This is an environmental issue, this is an environmental crisis. But really it's a human issue. It has to do with our health, whether that's our mental health, our cultural health and well-being, our spiritual health, and our physical health. It's rooted in who we are and our connection to the land around us and how that land is changing. It's not just an environmental issue. This is not just an issue for politicians to debate about. This is an issue for all of us to be engaged in every day in all the different types of work that we do. I used to be the health director in Fishing Lake in the Métis settlement in Alberta. And as a health director, there are many things on your desk, and you struggle to get through those things daily. Whether it's, you know, dealing with, you know, as we heard from our young people about suicide or food security, or just, you know, single moms trying to take care of their little ones. So when you try and add climate into that conversation, it's overwhelming. It's a lot to handle and a lot to deal with. It's one more thing that we have to deal with. And I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 2 little boys, 7 and 4, Gavin and Cullen. And this is on my mind a lot. You know, like, where are my kids gonna be in the future? What are we leaving them? And it's overwhelming. Seeing images like this in the media all the time, and this is not just in Canada, in other places of the world, they're seeing far bigger impacts. So I think we need to be mindful of this. So I want to talk about 4 main areas that are specific to women and women's health and well-being. And that has to do with heat. So heat waves kill more people every year than any other extreme weather event combined. More than flooding, more than hurricanes, more than tornadoes. And this is really important to consider because heat is something, well, for me anyway, I'm like in a, you know, spring dress looking forward to the summer coming because I'm tired of winter. But heat is one of those things that we can be excited for, but also it can be quite dangerous, especially for women who might be, you know, living on their own, who might not have access to an air conditioner or have access to resources. And the way that our bodies are, we deal with heat quite differently than men. And that's something to keep in mind, you know, and especially pregnant women dealing with heat. I remember, and I'm just gonna share this, but when I was pregnant in the summer, we had a heat wave here in Ottawa, and I was so hot. And my partner, he was like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I'm massive and it's hot and I just need to put a fan here and sit in front of it for all day long, okay? Just give me a fan and I'll be fine." But it's really serious. Heat is something that is not talked about a lot because we try and embrace our summers, but it's something that's occurring more and more where we're seeing days that are 40 degrees. In areas like Ottawa, we have humidity, and the biggest issue is that at nighttime, where our bodies are trying to rest and recover from heat days, those nighttime conditions are staying hot. So we're not getting a rest. Our bodies cannot rest so that we can deal with the heat in the next day. And so these are things to consider, is that men and women and elderly and pregnant women, we all deal with heat very differently, and we all need to be able to have a conversation about that. We all need to be able to support each other and connect to each other during a heat event. So heat is a big one. The other thing is women and food security. So before I joined the MNC, I was working on a project with Jim for the last 13 years on supporting Indigenous peoples in leading climate adaptation research to minimize health risk. And 90% of these projects were around food security. Women traditionally are the ones to be able to support their families with food. And traditionally in some cultures, as you know, women's roles are different in terms of, women are berry picking. Women are the ones that are responsible for some of those, for food for their families. And so when food becomes more expensive because there's a drought somewhere else in the country, that's a women's responsibility, or women carry that. Or if you can't access your blueberries because blueberries are migrating further north because of climate conditions, that has an impact on women. And so food access, food availability, access to traditional foods is a big concern among Indigenous communities across this country, and the people who are leading work around food security are women, Indigenous women, because it's part of who we are, to provide for our families. The other one is women in extreme events. And as you know, we've seen more fire events that have just gotten worse in BC and Alberta, flooding events, as I've mentioned, extreme events like tornadoes. And many times in this country, we're stuck in this system where the protocol is communities get evacuated. You just evacuate your communities, we'll put them in an urban center, into a gym somewhere, and that's how we're gonna protect people. But that impacts women significantly different than it impacts men. There's actually been some work done around the mental health impacts of evacuation, and women, when they're evacuated into different communities, say like a community like Winnipeg, are far more vulnerable when they come into community. And they're also the ones who are carrying a lot of the burden, making sure their families are safe, making sure they're usually the ones in the kitchen cooking for their community if they're in a rec center or something. They're usually the ones going around making sure the elders are healthy and safe. Women during an evacuation are the caregivers and carry much more burden. So when you see more evacuations in this country happening, that means more women are being impacted. I was speaking to a woman who's a mental health support worker in Alberta, and she was, asked to go to Saskatchewan to deal with the evacuations from a forest fire there. And her whole team went happily to go support, and these were all women health supporters, or mental health supporters. And then they got called back to Alberta because there were fires there, but that whole team was burnt out because of them supporting others in Saskatchewan, now having come back and keep supporting. So I think we need to keep those things in mind in terms of how women are being impacted by evacuations, the safety of women in evacuations, and the safety of our young women and girls in evacuations is really important. So I know I've had slides with a lot of information. I'm assuming that this information is going to get sent to you and you can happy read it later. But the other major thing that's not talked a lot about is mental health. Mental health and climate change are so interconnected, and it's one of those things that kind of is just underlying the issue. So there's 4 pieces of mental health issues that come with climate. There's eco-grief, eco-anxiety, eco-paralysis, and nostalgia. Those are some big technical words, and pretty much it means that we feel like crap when we hear about all this stuff in the news because we don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to react to it. We grieve the environment that we're used to seeing. When you lose a forest that you grew up in due to fire, there's grief there because there's loss there. Because of that connection to that land around you is changing. There's grief. There's eco-paralysis because we don't know what to do. How am I going to fix the climate issue? How am I going to deal with all of these things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis and deal with climate? So there's that paralysis. So these are all pieces that are intertwined. You know, after the Slave Lake fires in Alberta, there's some interesting research that points that the need for PTSD, there's high risk of PTSD, and anti-depression and anti-anxiety medication went through the roof. And that was mostly tied to women identifying themselves needing those sources of medication to deal with their anxiety because of that one fire, and then the flood, then fire. So there's, you know, these are all things to consider when you're looking at climate and the work that you're doing. So I probably brought down the room quite a bit by talking about all that scary stuff about climate and the crisis that we're in. You don't want to see me do that. You don't want to see me. I've tried. It's not pretty. But really, I like to end, and I really want to pass this to Jim, and I have a video I want to show, because women are leaders, okay? There's so much opportunity in this room with your knowledge and expertise and who you are as a person that we can tackle this issue. We are caregivers. We are people who are constantly tackling and dealing with issues every single day as women, okay? And so when I talk about climate change research, it's women who are leading these research pieces for their communities and for their families. And, you know, climate change and gender has really become at the forefront, both nationally with the Canadian government, including gender and climate change dialogue and policy, and also internationally. I've been to the UN a couple of times as part of the Canadian delegation. And I would say in the last 10 years, probably in this last climate change summit I was at, gender was at the forefront. Why? Because you can't ignore half the world's population and half the world's expertise when it comes to climate. We're going to solve this problem, and it's the women who are going to do it. No offense, Jim.
I've known you long enough.
Yeah. And, you know, women are proven to be natural leaders in this. We care about our families, we care about the land, we care about our futures. And so you're seeing women from around the world rise up. And I also want to acknowledge those young women, okay? We talk about youth, and youth are the ones who are going to solve this problem as well. And we need our youth at the table. We need our youth advocating, and we're going to do it. And so this is what gives me hope. You know, people ask me, like, how can you work in climate for like close to 20 years? Isn't it depressing? It's like, yeah, it's depressing. But this is what we need to do. We need to have these conversations. We need to work together. And, you know, it's about people. At the end of the day, it's about people, and it's about our kids and our grandkids or our nieces or nephews. And it's what we're leaving behind, and we don't have a choice anymore. We can't debate or get political about this issue. Climate change is a crisis, it's here, and what are we gonna do about it? So I'm asking you to, in your everyday lives, to think about what your role is and what little things you can do, you know, to make a change, or who do you need to talk to, or how can we partner to find solutions to deal with this crisis? And so I have a little video. I hope it works. Okay. So I'm with the Métis National Council, and I'd be happy to work with you if you have ideas or priorities for yourself. Or priorities that you'd like to focus on. The Métis National Council has hired Jim to do a national health assessment, because we don't have the data. We don't know how women in the Métis Nation are being impacted by climate, and obviously it's going to change, whether you're in Alberta or BC or Manitoba. It's not going to be the same, and everyone's story is really different. So I'm happy to talk. I'm just a phone call away, and I'd be really grateful to hear what your thoughts are on this. And this is a little video. It's done by the UN. It's called Women for Results, and Momentum for Change is a program in the UN that recognizes work done by women to support climate change innovation and solutions. And so if you want more information about this program, because you can apply and highlight and showcase the incredible work that you're doing or that you want to do, I just wanted to show you this and end on a kind of positive note that there are solutions, and the women are the ones who are going to be developing those solutions, and the ones that need to be at the table discussing these issues and advocating and pushing governments to make real change. So happy to answer any questions after this, and I think I just press play.
A changing climate.
Oh.
Climate affects everyone. To address the rapidly intensifying environmental, economic, and social consequences of climate change, we need diverse voices, including women and girls. And women and girls are stepping up to the climate challenge as powerful agents of change. The UN Global Climate Action Awards recognize women-led climate solutions around the world. Across sub-Saharan Africa, young women from marginalized farming communities are trained to become champions of sustainable agriculture. The Campaign for Female Education's project helps these young women improve the productivity, sustainability, and profitability of farming in their communities.
The Climate Smart Agricultural Guide program is about young women going back to their communities and harnessing what they've now learned, the modern knowledge about climate, about what causes it, but also harnessing the indigenous knowledges and saying, how do we help the resilience and the coping in our communities? Particularly given that we work in rural communities, where communities live off the land, where they rely on the land for income, for resources, for their food and everything. And this then impacts on whether a girl can go to school or not.
It is very important to share what I've learned to other women so that they can grow their own crops, to have food secure, and they can have their own money so that they can send their children to school.
In the United States, Mothers Out Front has mobilized over 24,000 mothers across the country by training and empowering them to advocate for a livable climate for their children.
One particular evening when I was reading a book to my daughter, who was then 4 years old, about coral reefs, and I suddenly realized that nothing in the book would she ever see because all the world's coral reefs are predicted to die in her lifetime. And it was the first time that I viewed the climate crisis through the lens of a mother. We are building a cross-class, multiracial movement of moms across the country. And those teams of mothers decide what it is they want to work on, and they drive campaigns at the local, state, and national levels focused on moving from dirty to clean energy. It is a very much of a locally rooted approach to organizing, but one that is designed to scale.
Indian NGO Mahila Housing Suar Trust is on a mission to organize and empower women living in slums. So far, the project has trained 1,500 women to become climate sathis, who communicate with local communities about climate change and conduct audits to help slash their energy costs.
People are more aware about shocks like the tsunamis or the earthquake, but people are not aware about long-term abstract stresses that are going to play around in urban areas because of climate change. And for India, those are actually the increase of heat stress, water scarcity, vector-borne disease, and flooding and inundation. It is abstract, but it is also potent danger. And I think in that sense also, because climate change is going to have an intergenerational impact, involvement of women and adolescent girls is very, very important, because by involving them, you are ensuring that whatever work you are doing encompasses generations.
One woman is leading the way in Israel and Gibraltar as the co-founder and CEO of a world-leading project to generate clean energy from the ocean. The company uses an innovative technology to help transform the world's energy mix and assists in the fight against climate change.
EcoWave Power's technology is fully modular and scalable. So for example, a 50 megawatt station will be 50 modules of 1 megawatt each. In every country or city in the world, there's usually breakwaters and piers and jetties and other types of non-used structures, and they're not used for anything other than breaking the waves. And we basically connect floaters to the external part of these breakwaters and turn them into a source of clean electricity. I used to come into the conference room about to present my wave energy power station, and then people went, espresso please. Everybody was sure that if there is a woman in the room, she's probably there as somebody's secretary or assistant. And this is something that has to change. The female entrepreneurs that get to a position of power where they can make an impact need to help other women as well to achieve different types of goals.
Women from around the world who are playing a leadership role by tackling the climate challenge head on. The 2019 Women for Results Winning Climate Projects, shining a light to show there's momentum for change. Change for good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much for that video, Erin. So, full disclosure, I am a white man and I cannot jig. Just thought I'd lay that out before anybody asks any questions. None of this is happening, okay? I've tried, it doesn't look pretty at all. So really tough act to follow. At least Erin didn't make me cry. Erin and I have been working together for a long time, but directly for 4 years under a climate change and health adaptation program when we were with Indigenous Services Canada. And Erin and I had some very heated debates along the way, and there were times where things would get very emotional, with joy and with anger at times, but a lot of joy. So thanks for not making me cry, Erin, out of joy today, although I'm not done yet. Before I forget, my slides are not near as engaging as Erin's. I'm going to present what I'm doing for the Métis National Council, why they've hired me, some of the information that I'm trying to collect. I'll just go to the next slide. Some of the information I'm trying to collect so they can develop a business case for moving forward on climate change and health. What I want to say before I forget is I'm looking at climate change. There's going to be some depressing slides here, as Erin had indicated as well. But there is an opportunity, and I think you look at climate change as an opportunity, and an opportunity to talk about resilience, an opportunity to talk about hope, and to pick up on what Jean said yesterday, an opportunity to actually provide some solutions and resolutions, things to move forward. And hopefully at the end of the day, I'm going to send you off into breakout sessions to talk about some questions I've posed. Hopefully at the end of the day, some of that will come back that I can use in the report to move forward for the Métis Council. And hopefully they can use that as they build their business case. So these are the terms of my contract, but really the most important thing is to strengthen that relationship with academia, climate consortiums, and federal government departments, and to provide some education and communications tools for the Métis Nation. I'm going to be doing some research. I'm looking into data. I'm looking what information is out there. Myself and my team, Megan Simpson, who's working with me on this, are really trying to find out information that's available from a quantitative perspective. And we're getting some of that information. It's very, as you probably know from being in the area, there's not a lot of information that's necessarily collected or parsed out from a Métis perspective, so that's proving some difficulty. But getting information from a qualitative point of view, from what people are seeing and what their perceptions are, is going to be a key component of what we put forward. So this is part of one of the climate projection models that are put forward, and I think it's one of the most important pieces. It is depressing, and it's showing that, if you're in eastern Canada, temperatures are going to rise by 2050 by between 2 and 3 degrees, and as you move towards the center of Canada, they're moving from 4 to 7 degrees to 8 degrees higher by 2050. And if you are in the north, you're buggered. It's really not a good place to be. Sorry, I shouldn't put it that way. It's not a good projection. This is one of the more moderate climate change models that's been done. It's the modelers have gotten together and they've done ones where Canada has met its greenhouse gas obligations, where Canada has gone over by a certain amount of megatons. And so this is the more moderate of some of 3 of the models that have been put forward. If Canada doesn't meet its projections, these heat temperatures that you're going to be seeing are going to be quite a bit higher. I just want to talk about the risks, and this gets back, I think, a bit to what Aaron was saying along the way, and I've got a couple other slides that will illustrate that. But last year, the Canadian Council of Academies released a report about the 12 major climate change risks facing Canada. I've been working in the field of environment and climate change pretty much my whole career, and in the health side of things since about 2006. And health was never on the radar screen of people. It was always the engineers, the planners, the economists, although I said I was that in my bio. Those who were in positions of, we need to work on infrastructure. That's where the adaptation needs to occur. We have to have better bridges. We have to have better levees. We have to have buildings that are going to be more resistant. We have to be watching what we're doing in floodplains. We have to look at more permeable surfaces because there's going to be more water runoff. So we need to look at these things. But why are we doing that? It's for people. It's for humans. It's for human health in the end. We, as individuals, we're the ones who are coping with climate change. Sorry I haven't mentioned the animals because those are the ones that are coping as well. But from a perspective, an anthropogenic perspective, it's humans that are facing climate change. The other thing I want to highlight in this slide, too, is the fact that there was a limited use of traditional knowledge in the report, and they recognized that. There is one of the risks that was presented was risks to traditional ways of life for Indigenous peoples. So they recognize that as a limitation. It's important, and that's in this. It's a report that certainly the Prime Minister's office and the finance sector is taking quite seriously. So it's important that Indigenous knowledge and tradition and impacts on traditional ways of life is recognized, and they indicate that more work has to be done. So I think that's an important stepping stone to build off of. Just a little bit about climate change and health. I think Erin's talked about all of these things in her presentation, the fact that food security is going to be an issue. There's going to be a number of water quality issues. There's going to be effects on heat and temperature and human health. What I want to highlight are those bits in red about the social determinants of health and the fact that, where you live, incomes, housing, your susceptibility to disease from whether you're diabetic or have pre-existing conditions, whether human rights and gender obviously play a role, and Erin's spoken about that. So these things are going to be magnified and compounded by climate change, as Erin articulated. I like this diagram because it puts, as I said earlier, it's putting humans in the center of it. I spent so much time talking with the planners and engineers, and human health was always this thing, we will get to. And then now it's actually more, as I showed from that previous slide, it's actually front and center in the debate, where I know at the federal government it's something that's entered into the discussions quite a bit. You can see the impacts on the left from drought and rain and temperature and storm surges and fires and wind and tornadoes. Two of the things is, one, the medical, the bit on the 3 elements on the right there with respect to medical and physical health, mental health, and community health. These are 3 very important components. One is sort of what's in place from a community's point of view for dealing with these extreme events when they come through. What can happen? Erin mentioned mental health, and these are some of the more poignant components now that are coming out as people are facing post-traumatic stress disorder from evacuations. Erin talked about eco-anxiety and solastalgia and what can you do about this. So these are impacts that are affecting us now and right away. But then from a community health perspective, and these are put in negative terms here in terms of aggression that can take place, or violence and crime, or social instability, but there's also positive aspects to that. And I want to draw on an example. Erin talked about heat-related illnesses and deaths, and I'll draw an example from 1995 where the city of Chicago had over 760 deaths over a 5-day period from a heat wave that came through. It overwhelmed the morgue so much that they were putting people into cold storage in the back in the parking lot. So they had these trailers piled up and these images of these people who had passed, and it's such a terrible outcome. And so there's been a number of analyses and studies on why this occurred, the types of people who passed, and not surprisingly, it was elderly people at home alone, those who perhaps didn't have money to turn on the air conditioners that may or may not have existed. But one of the studies showed that social cohesion was so important. And it looked at 2 different neighborhoods within Chicago at that point in time. One was an Italian community and one was an Afro-American community. And the Italian community had people who knew their neighbors, who knocked on their doors, who knew who their elderly people were, who had a sense of community. And in the black community, the deaths in the African American community were so much higher. I don't know the percentages, but it reflected just a huge contrast between communities that had that social cohesion, the resilience that was there already, or had been not planned for, but it just happened to be there. So I think that's an important aspect about hope and taking action moving forward, is things can be done to not feel helpless around climate change. This slide's saying the same thing as the previous one. It just doesn't have people in it, but it shows some of those other different risks that climate change is causing, from rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and what that translates to from an air pollution perspective, with more asthmas, more cardiovascular deaths or disease. Vectors in Canada, there's Lyme disease and West Nile disease that we're hearing lots about. That's because of climate change. The allergens I've mentioned with respect to respiratory issues, water quality impacts with some of the nasties that are getting into the water, so on and on. So it describes climate change in a different way. Oh, thank you very much. So I just wanted to situate the Métis Nation in some of the bits that we're seeing in Canada. I've highlighted mental health there, just because it is something that seems to run through all of them, although forest fires are one that is in each one of the regions that are identified. So these are the effects. I've brought it from the general into what we're seeing specifically within Canada and the Métis Nation. It's kind of a technical slide, but this is why we conduct health vulnerability assessments, is to provide that evidence that I'm looking for from both qualitative and quantitative information, and establishing that baseline. Those images are from the one protecting your health is from the WHO, that's World Health Organization, that's actually produced guidelines for countries and communities to undertake vulnerability assessments. It's kind of a how-to guide. And the other 3, the one in the middle, the assessment of climate change, was actually from a small nation state, a small Caribbean state, Dominica, who actually looked at their whole healthcare system and looked at the risks that the country was facing. And the other 2 are from local health authorities in Simcoe, Muskoka, and London, I believe it is. So these assessments can take, the ones for London and Simcoe, Muskoka were 18-month assessments. They had a whole team of bringing people together, caregivers, the planners, the engineers, the health people, the economists and others, to actually come through and develop what those baseline conditions are and what the risks that they're facing, and making recommendations to move forward. And that's what I'm trying to do in 3 months for Erin. We've spoken about these already, so some of the climate change and health vulnerabilities that we're finding, that we're aware of in the research. I put this in because I didn't really know what Erin was going to say, and it was just some of the pieces I certainly was aware of from women in extreme events. And the 2 are the one on the bottom is the stat that really strikes me quite a bit. The number of suicide attempts and completions after Hurricane Katrina and Rita, and they were found that reported rates of suicide attempt completion to be 78.6 times and 14.7 times the regional average. So these are having impact, and women are the ones that are on the front lines of having to deal with it. This is just, again, I'm sort of getting into this idea of perceptions of climate change, because what people are seeing on the ground, what you and other individuals are seeing, whether they're picking berries, watching different sunrises and sunsets, watching water flows, hunting and trapping. These are the things that people are seeing on the ground. And this is an image from a workshop Aaron and I attended in Atlantic Canada, where they talked about these perspectives of what they're seeing, and they talked about some of the health impacts that they're feeling from climate change. So these are an important, probably going to be the most important component of the report when I finish it. This is just another piece about perceptions. It was an Environics poll that was done in 2017, and it lumped Métis, First Nations, and Inuit people together in their perceptions about climate change impacts. So my next steps are finishing the research and meeting and interviews with other people, doing some focus group sessions, and this is why I'm really hopeful about the breakout session today, where I'm going to put some questions up in a minute that you can discuss moving forward. And a communications tool that will make it easier for you as individuals to understand climate change and to communicate to, whether it's people within your community, to your children, to your elders, to your spouses, to your aunties, to your grannies, what climate change means and what we can do. And I think that message of hope has to be part of it. And there's some contact information. Megan and I were lucky enough to attend a mental health and climate change forum with the Métis Nation of BC, Métis Nation of BC, and so that's an image of the nice work that was done from the graphic designer there. And some of you I know I recognize from the meeting here. So here's some breakout questions. I don't know whether we're going to take a break first and move forward. A woman's lens is obviously very important. I put some very, women specific question. How are women being impacted by climate change? What are the strengths of the Métis women in reducing health risks? But I think the breakout questions are all about perspectives of women. This is going to be one of the first really gender-type focus group questions. I think that's even been done at a broader climate change level, whether from a national perspective. So this is going to be really kind of funky to get the results from this. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
So I want to let you know that we are going to give, because we kind of pushed you ahead of the break, just because our time crunch is so bad here, and we've been late every day and have pushed things all over the agenda. So we're going to let them have a break. And then we'll come back, and we have a fun thing that we're going to do for just a few minutes, and then we'll come back to the breakout questions. But I want to just kind of, not to be critical, but I want us to talk about, I know your report's due at the end of March, but because we're going to be the funky part of putting a woman's lens on things, I'd like to have a bit of co-development on how the women's lens gets into the report. So if we could work together, I have an amazing staff team, and I know Erin's just down the corridor from me. So I would like to see us make sure that we're well represented. I want to be on the video with the UN women, actually, by the time we're all done. But I also want to tell you, and you did see it yesterday, Jim, I think that one of the things that we need to do is also highlight the Métis pedology. Anyway, she'll say it better than me. We need to kind of highlight that program about learning programs for early childhood learning around things like climate change and environment. If we educate our children now, they'll have a much better future because they'll be better at protecting land and water than we have been.
If I could just comment on that. Because yesterday that struck me, the image of the children, the tactile bit of holding the fur, touching the furs and growing the plants. And when Aaron and I worked for Indigenous Services Canada, we funded a number of community-based programs that where elders, women, hunters and trappers would use the funding to have an opportunity to bring children together. And it was partly about climate change, again, the opportunity that presents, but it also presented a chance to talk about culture, to talk about spirituality. I mean, these were very small children in yesterday's piece, but these were thinking about, we were talking youth, who was talking about youth yesterday and the risk between 10 and 12 years old? That was Eugene. So if you have a chance to use climate change as an opportunity for discussions around what it means to be Métis, what it means to how you can reduce risks, I think there's a nice synergy there.
So we'll be back at 11:25.
Could I just say something before we break?
Sure.
It's just going to take me a minute. I'm from, my name is Diane Ludwig. I'm from Alberta. I am an elder in one of the schools there. And we do have a program where we take students out into the bush to set rabbit snares, to teach them how to fix wild meat, make hamburger and that. The trouble we run into is not having enough money for busing, for getting other people to come into our school to help with what we're doing. There was, we had something on Facebook, and thank God for media sometimes. There was 10,000 hits that we had from our school and what we were doing with the children and living off the land, or living with the land. So, Lac-Leamy.
So back at 11:25. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we're back. So wrap up your little conversations, and we're going to do a dance exercise with Tori. Tori, where are you? I can't see her. Okay. And let's say hi to Tori. Yay!
Good grammar and spelling.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. Good morning. So, I don't know about you guys, but I need lots of coffee to get me through my day. And sometimes I'm still not awake. So I am the newest member of the LMFO family. I just started last week and been kind of thrown into it. So hello, you'll see me around. Hopefully again, I've gotten to know quite a few of you over the course of the last few days. My given name is Makatoon. So for those of you that have met me, it translates directly to Big Mouth. And all of you know why. I like to talk. And my last name, Weapon a Capo, translates to last man standing. So I'm the big mouth last man standing. Don't argue with me. Just kidding. All right, so to get us started, I need everyone standing up. What? Okay, so when I'm done here, what I do is I actually go and I teach kids after school. I'm a dance teacher. I specialize in acrobatics, so I work with Cirque du Soleil. I teach their curriculum, and I get my young students ready to go and be able to perform with them when they want a dance career. And they start really young too, so it's really amazing and it's really rewarding. So I'm gonna share a little bit of my other background with you guys. So cue music.
Well, that was a hoot and a half, and it was all on live stream. Okay, so now we're gonna do Jim's breakout groups. Could we get that slide back up with the questions? Maybe? Yeah, could we put the questions, Jim's questions back up, please? Thank you so much. And we're gonna stay at our tables just for the sake of time. Yeah, you dance. Okay, so we're gonna stay at our tables for the sake of time. And yeah. Anything else you want to say, Jim, or is that good?
No, I think it's good. You don't have to answer every one of the questions at the tables, but there's something guidance for you. And are we going to come back and report the plenary answer, or is it going to be collected in? There are questions for guidance for you to help structure your tables. You don't have to answer all of them because we probably don't have enough time to answer all of them. So pick ones that you're comfortable with and try and go through them. Obviously take a women's lens is what I'm looking for. And it'll all be collected in somehow, some way for me. Okay?
Cool.
Is that,
Yep, that's great. We'll get note takers at each table.
I want to dance.
You want to dance? Jim wants to dance more. Where's that Cree boy?
So I want to say we're going to do it the way we did yesterday. We'll get people to take notes. We'll drop off papers from the flip charts to each table, and somebody take notes, and then maybe we'll come back with one major point, but we'll collect all the stuff. Crystal will put it together, and we'll get it to Jim and Aaron for their report. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Let's start wrapping up now. I think lunch might be outside. I just want to say to you, if there's any of you that want to follow up directly with myself, I think you're going to be getting copies of the presentation. My email is on the presentation. It's jimfraze@rogers.com. Happy to take any information from individuals and help that informing the report. But I'll be working with people in the Métis Council here to get that information. So did we want to report back to plenary at all, Melanie, or?
What's that?
Did we want to report back at all, or? Yeah, one thing from each table. Okay, sure. Yeah, and just for those of you that are representatives here from Alberta and Saskatchewan, I haven't had a lot of feedback from my contacts in Alberta and Saskatchewan, so if you do want to send me an email with so your voice is heard, that would be fantastic. So why don't I start down here on the left where the heart is, and they can give me one item per table is what I'm looking for you to talk back, let plenary back know. Who wants to be the spokesperson? Okay, oh sorry. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay, so I have just like 2 quick points. Our table, we had a lot to say, but one of the most important things, I think, is to find more ways to protect the environment and to protect the rights of the land defenders who are advocating for the environment. To lessen climate change impacts in the long term, we need to move towards clean energy and reducing our carbon footprints, creating resilient communities, promoting self-resilience, and in terms of accessible resources such as hydro, wind, and solar development. Yeah, there's so much more. But.
Thank you.
So resoundingly, our table agreed that we need to stop shoving the problems onto our kids and youth and look at this as a shared responsibility. It's been a long time of having education and awareness around climate change and pollution, and we keep looking to our kids to be the ones to bring the action, and I think it's a shared responsibility. We all agree in that, and one way that we can do this is a campaign around upcycling, because our grannies, our aunties, and our sisters definitely know how to repurpose goods. So let's get our kids and our youth loving repurposing.
Please.
Can you hear me? Okay. So our table, there's so many questions up there. We decided to maybe talk about what can be done in regards to climate change. And in response to how do we build capacity at the local level, we decided that it would be nice to build a climate change toolkit. And in that toolkit, it would include like how to recycle, what to recycle, and when to recycle. Energy efficient programs such as, you know, the lights, anything that kind of saves on any of that old electrical stuff. And in regards to that, we also thought that it would be better to educate the youth on this toolkit, such as turning off the lights at a certain hour, like don't leave them on all the time, maybe turning off your devices and just kind of starting them young, kind of thing.
Strong youth component coming out. Thank you.
I can't believe Métis women are asked to only say one thing. We focused on emergency response, and there's a lot in here that maybe will come out, but our big focus was that through women, we need to be prepared. We need to make sure our families are prepared. We need to make sure our communities are prepared, and that we know what's going on, because we always have to know what's going on to manage it, and we're the managers.
Thank you.
Good morning. Our table talked about survival and really teaching, as Métis women, we can teach the younger people how to trap, how to hunt, how to garden, basic survival skills. And especially right now with COVID-19, as I'm seeing reports on Facebook and on news, like the shelves are empty. And I was just telling the group at home that I've mentioned to my husband that we could basically survive for 3 months at home because of all the canning and the food preparation and fermenting and things that I do at home. So we can teach that to our Métis youth.
Over here, please.
Well, she just about said what I just wanted to say, but I'm a proud hunter, female gatherer, and I would like to see us get back onto the land with not just with our children, but with the entire family, and just go out and how do you say, self-sustain ourselves once again, and not be so affected by the impacts of companies and other things going on. Be strong in your words to these companies. Be strong when you're consulting with them in your communities. We also need more action at that consultation level. We need to be more transparent about what's really going on, and it's obvious, right, that we're not really getting the news and information that we're supposed to be getting to make good decisions and to make a good consultation.
Thank you.
Our action item that we came up with is that we need Métis woman representation and our women to be at the table for these climate change plans and actions and reports. We can't just be consulted, and that we need our women at every level of those plans and actions, or else we won't be heard and we'll be passed. Anyway, we got a lot of knowledge, so they should listen. That's all.
Thank you. Fundamental, yes.
So our table basically agrees and thanks everybody, like what you guys basically said. So there's no education. We need education for recycling, rural and urban areas and surroundings. We need more transformation. We need more compost areas and more challenges from the government for programs such as the Get To one. And what that is to get 1 garbage bag a week and so on. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
So 2 key takeaways from my table quickly. So the first one was on culture loss. Like, we often think of Métis women as strong matriarchs, of holders of culture who can pass that down intergenerationally. But if we lose the land due to climate change, how will that impact spreading our culture down to future generations? And then tied to that, it can be really important with climate change action to have like different braiding of knowledge systems, so Western science and Indigenous knowledge in a respectful way. In terms of health impacts, that can be psychology as well. Like we talked about how there's often a disconnect between community health that Métis people or Indigenous women will know about, and then the Western psychological health, and there's often like a disconnect between those two. And looking at something like climate change, how does climate change impact epigenetics, so changes in gene expression on Indigenous women or Métis women? That would be a really valuable thing to look at. And then my second point is on climate change and privilege. So often, like something that was pointed out at my table is often the people that face the biggest climate change impacts, such as the Inuit up north in more isolated communities, are the ones that are truly living very sustainably. So that's kind of the horrible irony of it all. And in terms of just Métis women in particular, like if we have to move around more because of climate change, how will that impact missing and murdered Indigenous women and that kind of thing when you place people like Métis women into unfamiliar environments and social situations? And then also just gendered violence towards women because of climate action. So there's been controversies over women like Greta Thunberg who speak up on climate action, and not only is she attacked for speaking on climate, she's also attacked because of her gender. So climate change action often faces very bad gendered violence and sexism. That's it.
Fantastic.
Hi, our table already went, but I'm a rebel with a cause, so. I come from northern British Columbia, and one of the things that hasn't been touched on, and I'm surprised, but as Indigenous people, we have a higher risk for diabetes, we have a higher risk for heart disease, and that is directly related to changes in our diet. Climate change affects traditional food gathering, hunting. We're seeing that right now as a proud mother of a hunter who got his first deer this year. Yeah. And a partner who sustains, and not only our own gathering, but trading with Indigenous partners on the coast for seafood and all of those other things that are guaranteed in our rights. Climate change is really affecting food populations, and that scares me, because I am privileged enough to have an income that if I have to go to the grocery store, I can go to the grocery store, and not all of our families do.
Thank you.
My new best friend, Dr. J, has asked me to read something that she has written, and it's called Métis Heart. Mother Earth Teachings Inspires Safety for Mother Earth. Heart, heat depletion, emissions down, air quality up, ration energy, and tree teachings. Métis Heart.
So, what an amazing bunch of women. I keep telling you guys that. Dr. J, I love you. I'm going to use that name from now on. I really like that. So one of the things that was brought to me by somebody, so I'm not taking credit for this, but we will do what I committed to doing, making sure that Aaron and Jim have all of the, because I know there were a lot of things that were engaged and brought forward that haven't been talked about yet. But we'll make sure all the information we've got is collected and sent. But we're also going to work internally to develop a policy paper that we will release on Earth Day on April 22nd, made up of all the things that you guys put together here today. And the theme of that paper is going to be climate change. I just have one other little announcement that's pretty exciting, that's kind of fresh off the hot press, that only Lisa knows about. We just received an email from the Toronto police. They want to arrest all you. No, I'm just kidding. No, we received an email about, I guess we didn't know this, but a couple of the Indigenous women that we've highlighted on our She's Indigenous campaign are Toronto City Police, and they want to support our campaign and use our campaign to launch lifting up more Indigenous women. So is that not cool? I'm going to ask Diane to come forward and do a prayer for us for lunch today, and then you guys will be able to go and eat. Either way, you can use this mic or that one, whatever's best for you.
Quick comment. I've arranged for rides for us to the airport for 7 of the women from BC.
Okay.
And that's at 2:30 this afternoon. 2:30? Yeah, I know.
So just a quick announcement. Some of our BC delegation has to leave early today because they have a governing assembly. I never know across the homeland what these are all called. But so they'll be leaving, and Joy Bremner has arranged for a driver to pick everybody up at 2:30 this afternoon. And I'm sorry you guys are all going to be leaving